It started with a single envelope, a thin, unassuming piece of paper that would ignite one of the most shocking royal scandals the world had ever seen. Imagine receiving news that challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself, your family, your identity, the people you trusted most. How would you react? Would you stay calm, or would something inside you snap? For Prince Harry, that moment didn't just challenge him. It broke him, in front of the entire courtroom. And later, the world would see the result, and no one would be ready. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. In the opening seconds of this story, the stakes were already sky high. Millions of people around the globe had been following Harry's life for years. Every glance, every word, every public appearance had been dissected by the press. Yet nothing prepared anyone for this. Not the tabloids. Not the royal watchers. Not even the members of the royal family themselves. Because this wasn't just another story about palace intrigue or media rumors. This was personal. It was raw. It was explosive. And it all began the moment that DNA results landed on his desk. Before we get into the courtroom chaos, it's important to understand why this moment mattered so much. DNA doesn't lie. Or at least, that's what people believe. It carries the weight of truth, of undeniable proof. For Harry, these results were supposed to settle questions that had lingered in the shadows for years. They were supposed to bring clarity, relief, maybe even a sense of justice. Instead, they did the opposite. They opened a floodgate of doubt, betrayal, and confusion that no one could contain. The envelope wasn't just paper, it was a catalyst. And the timing couldn't have been more dramatic. Just days before the court date, rumors had already begun circulating in the tabloids. Headlines screamed about family betrayals, royal secrets exposed, and Prince Harry loses control. Social media had exploded. Every platform buzzed with speculation, theories, and leaked tidbits. The pressure wasn't just public, it was suffocating. Harry wasn't just facing a judge. He was facing the world. And inside, he knew the results would be devastating. Picture him in his private chambers the night before the hearing. The envelope sat on the polished mahogany desk, an ominous presence under the soft lamplight. He picked it up once, then set it down. Picked it up again, hesitated, and finally tore it open. And as he scanned the pages, his hands began to tremble. Lines blurred. Words he thought he understood suddenly made no sense. The world seemed to tilt. And then, the disbelief hit, harder than any headline or rumor ever could. The DNA results didn't match expectations. Not even close. They contradicted years of assumptions, of stories carefully curated for public consumption, of private beliefs held close to his heart. And just like that, everything he thought he knew about loyalty, bloodlines, and trust was called into question. It wasn't just a personal shock. It was an emotional earthquake, shaking the foundations of his identity. What would you do if someone you loved, someone you thought you could trust without question, had hidden the truth from you for years? If the evidence was staring you in the face, yet your mind refused to accept it? That's exactly where Harry found himself. His disbelief wasn't just quiet. It was a storm brewing. He knew that when he walked into the courtroom the next day, he wouldn't be able to contain it. The media outside had already set the stage. Photographers jostled for position. Reporters whispered to each other, their cameras aimed at the courthouse doors. They had no idea what was about to happen inside, but they could sense it, the tension, the anticipation. Every click of a camera, every flash, every murmur added another layer of pressure. Harry wasn't walking into a neutral space. He was stepping into a battlefield. And in the center of it all stood him, caught between duty, truth, and an emotional breaking point. Even the royal family, usually adept at maintaining composure, had sensed the impending storm. Private communications were frantic. Lawyers and advisors debated what to do, how to prepare him, how to contain the fallout. But some things can't be contained. Emotions have a way of escaping, especially when they're tied to identity, trust, and betrayal. And in Harry's case, they weren't just escaping. They were about to explode in a way no one would forget. It's easy to imagine this scene in slow motion. The courthouse doors open, the murmur of anticipation crescendos, and Harry steps inside. His expression is controlled, calculated. But the slightest twitch of his eye, the subtle tension in his jaw, hints at the storm beneath the surface. Every step echoes in the marble halls, a countdown to the inevitable. And the courtroom? It waits. Judges, lawyers, witnesses, all unaware of how close they are to witnessing history in the making. Because make no mistake, what happened in that room wasn't just a royal scandal. It was a human one. It was raw emotion exposed to the world. Anger, desperation, shame, betrayal. Each feeling collided in Harry's mind, each one amplified by the cameras, the whispers, the global audience hanging on every heartbeat. And all of it started with a simple piece of paper, the DNA results. As we prepare to enter that courtroom, it's important to remember one thing. There are no scripts in real life. No rehearsals. No chance to take a line back. Every word, every action, every reaction would be permanent. And Harry, who had spent years in the public eye, had never faced anything like this. Not the press, not the rumors, not the constant scrutiny. This was different. This was personal, and it would test him in ways that few could imagine. So as you watch or read this story unfold, ask yourself, what would you do if your entire understanding of your life was suddenly thrown into chaos? How far would you go to defend yourself? To reject the truth that seemed unbearable? And how much could anyone control when the world was watching every reaction, every gesture, every word? The answers to those questions would come in the courtroom, and what happened there would shock not just the public, but the very people Harry thought he could trust. It started as disbelief. It turned to anger, and by the end, it would become something no one saw coming. A breakdown that would be replayed across screens, dissected by analysts, and remembered for years to come. But that moment, the one that would set the stage for the chaos, the shouting, the accusations, the shocking confrontations, was still ahead. The envelope had been opened. The truth had been revealed. The storm was on the horizon, and all anyone could do was wait. Wait for the moment when restraint would snap, and the courtroom, and the world, would bear witness to a scene no royal family had ever experienced before. And as we prepare to step inside with Harry, know this. What comes next will defy expectation. The DNA results were only the beginning. What happened when he faced the reality of them in court? That's where the story truly explodes. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if you knew the world was watching, but the person you trusted the most had just shattered everything you believed about your own life? Imagine walking into a courtroom, the most public stage imaginable, with your secrets exposed and your heart racing like a drumbeat you can't control. That was Prince Harry, and in the hours before he stepped into that room, there was a strange, almost surreal calm. It's a calm that only happens when you know something irreversible is about to happen. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Harry sat alone in his private chambers, staring at the envelope that had destroyed his peace of mind. He turned it over, tapped the corner, and considered for the millionth time whether he should even read the pages again. The words were already seared into his mind. The DNA results didn't match what he had been told, what he had assumed, what he had relied on for years. And yet, staring at them now, the initial disbelief began to ferment into something darker, something more dangerous: anger. He thought back to all the years of carefully curated narratives, the stories the press had told, the family stories he had been told. All of it seemed like a lie, or at least a partial one. And partial lies are sometimes worse than complete ones because they make you question every single memory, every single relationship, every single decision you've made. How could he trust anyone again? Could he trust himself? Outside, London had its usual hum, but to Harry, it felt distorted, almost like a slow-motion scene in a movie. The city had no idea what was about to unfold. The press speculated endlessly, of course. Some headlines hinted at tension between him and his family. Others suggested impending legal chaos. But no one, not even the closest advisors, could have predicted what would happen inside the courthouse that day. And Harry knew it. He picked up his phone. A message blinked on the screen. His lawyer checking in, reminding him to stay composed, to control his emotions, to act like a royal. But how can you act like a royal when your world is collapsing in front of you? How can you sit politely, nod, smile, and answer questions when the evidence on that envelope screamed betrayal? He deleted the message without replying. He didn't need reminders. He had instinct. As the night drew on, Harry tried to sleep, but rest refused him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the courtroom. He imagined the judge's stern face, the murmurs of the gallery, the click of cameras. He imagined reading the results aloud and the look on everyone's face when they realized just how off the story had been all along. And he felt the tension building in his chest, a pressure that no one could see, but everyone would feel once he stepped into that room. And yet, despite all that, there was an almost eerie calm. Not because Harry had resolved anything, not because he had made peace with the DNA results, but because in this calm, he was planning, calculating, visualizing every move, every argument, every possible reaction from the people around him. He knew the courtroom would not just test him emotionally, it would test him strategically. How far would he go? How much would he reveal? How much could he control before the truth overwhelmed him completely? That's the thing about moments like this. You can prepare, but you can never really know. The human mind has limits. And when emotions are stirred by betrayal, public scrutiny, and personal history all at once, those limits are tested. Harry had spent a lifetime in the public eye. He had managed crises before. But nothing, and I mean nothing, had prepared him for this combination. Undeniable proof of a secret he hadn't wanted to exist, the pressure of global attention, and the looming presence of the people who had shaped his entire life. And it wasn't just the DNA results. There were whispers, rumors, leaked messages. People were talking about private conversations, about family tensions, about hidden alliances. Every piece of information felt like a spark near a powder keg, and Harry could feel the tension, the energy, coiling inside him, a storm ready to break. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that one wrong move could send everything tumbling down. That's how he felt. Every heartbeat echoed in the quiet room. Every breath felt heavier. He tried to focus on something else, anything else. The decor, the papers on the desk, the faint hum of the city outside. But the calm was only temporary. The storm was waiting, and it wouldn't be denied. He thought about the courtroom itself. It wasn't just a room. It was a stage, a battlefield. Every person inside, lawyers, judge, witnesses, even the gallery, was a player in a drama that had been months, maybe years, in the making. And yet, Harry was at the center, the pivot on which everything turned. He would dictate the emotional tone of that room. And as much as he tried to plan, he knew one thing for certain. The truth, once fully revealed, had the power to destroy any carefully laid plans. Even his advisors had warned him. Stay calm, they said. Control your voice, control your expressions. But can anyone truly control themselves when their deepest identity, their family's hidden truths, and their entire public persona collide in one explosive moment? Harry knew the answer before the words were even spoken. He couldn't. Not completely. And that lack of control terrified him, even as it drove him forward. Hours passed. The night grew colder. The envelope lay open, the words still vivid, still accusing. And in that quiet, Harry rehearsed. Not the words, not the legal arguments. They were secondary. He rehearsed the reactions, the gasps, the shock. He imagined the faces of the people who had deceived him, who had hidden the truth, and for a fleeting moment, he allowed a thought to surface. He wanted them to feel the weight of this revelation just as he did. And yet, beneath all that calculation, beneath all that preparation, there was a very real fear. Because Harry knew something about human nature. Once a person crosses the line from disbelief to anger, there's no guarantee of how far they'll go. There's no guarantee of restraint. And for someone in his position, the combination of emotion, ego, and public scrutiny was a perfect storm. It would test every limit. And once the storm broke, there was no turning back. Finally, morning arrived. The envelope had been read, reread, memorized, analyzed. The calm was gone. In its place, a simmering intensity, a barely contained fury that would define what happened next. He dressed carefully, meticulously, in a way that projected control, but inside, he was anything but. Every step toward the courthouse was weighted with anticipation. Every glance from a passerby felt like scrutiny. Every camera flash, even from a distance, seemed to mock him, to preempt what was about to unfold. As he entered the courthouse doors, the murmurs of the press and public swelled. The photographers clicked incessantly, unaware that the real story was not outside, but inside the room. The silence of the courtroom awaited him like a predator. The judge's gaze, the lawyers' poised pens, the gallery of witnesses, they were all there, and none of them had any idea of the storm that Harry carried with him. And that's the moment where calm ended. The storm had arrived. The envelope had done its work. The DNA results had done their work. And Harry, caught between disbelief, rage, and a desperate need for truth, stepped into the room knowing one thing. Once he crossed that threshold, there was no turning back. Everything he had planned, everything he had imagined, everything he had hoped to control would be tested. And the result would shock not just those present, but the world watching from afar. But what came next, the first words spoken, the first reactions, the first cracks in composure, would change everything. And no one, absolutely no one, was prepared for what they were about to witness.